Alright, what is good, ladies and gentlemen, is the Master Reviewer back again with another review, and today we are doing a review for Penguins of Madagascar. That is right, this is the fourth film in the Madagascar franchise. It is the spin-off film that stars the actual penguins that takes place after the original trilogy. It is a rewatch for me, and before I begin, I'll just say that I am hopefully in the near future going to be starting to get back to a bit more variety and not just focusing on momentum with all the viewer recommendations and stuff, so hopefully that'll be coming soon. But yeah, anyway, let's just begin starting off with the plot. So the plot of the film is that the penguins, after leaving the circus, like they weren't going to stay around for all like the circus hijinks that would happen with the animals after the events of the third film, so they end up leaving, and it is Private's birthday, and so they go to Fort Knox in order to they break into Fort Knox, not for the gold, but in order to get to a cheesy dibble vending machine, which is like their favorite snack. So they do that. They ask Private like what he wants the most in the world, basically. He said, and Private says he wants to be I forgot the exact term he uses, but he says he says he wants to be a meaningful and valued member of the team. And so that's kind of like the whole thing, this film, where it's like Private, he wants to be valued by the other members, but it's like Skipper, and Skipper specifically, he's like not really showing him the appreciation that he wants, I guess. So anyway, so they are at the vending machine, but then they end up getting captured by an octopus, and then they are brought to the lab of this octopus, and it is revealed that this octopus is Dave, aka Dr. Octavius Brine, I'm pretty sure his name is, and so he reveals himself as like being a former zoo mate of the penguins. He used to be in Central Park Zoo, and then because the penguins ended up showing up, then no one cared for him anymore. Everyone like viewed him as a monster because the penguins were so cute. And so his whole thing is that he wants revenge. He wants to capture all the penguins and turn them into these monsters, basically. So that is his ultimate goal. And yeah, so the penguins, he shows them this Medusa serum that he's going to use in order to turn the penguins all into monsters, and the penguins, they end up stealing it. And then they escape. I think currently they're in Venice, so, or sorry, I should be respectful. Ever since I watched JoJo Part 5, it's like they said that like that everyone like pronounces it wrong, so it's not Venice, it's Veni. I forgot how you're supposed to say. Let me check real quick. Right, so it's called Venezia. Yeah, so Anyway, so they escape from there, and while they escape, they're about to get captured by some of Dave's henchmen, but they end up getting saved by the North Wind, which is an organization that's basically, their whole thing is helping protect animals that can't protect themselves. So yeah, they end up bringing the penguins to their base, asking them questions about Dave and like trying to get information out of them, and then they should tell them basically like, oh, it's fine, we already saved the day, we got the Medusa serum from Dave. And so from there, Dave ends up calling in, and so he is gloating about like the fact that no, they didn't actually, like, he still has a lot more Medusa serum, so it's like his plane isn't ruined or anything like that. And then from there, the North Wind, they plan to start, like, they're starting to plan an operation, while the penguins, they like kind of get in the way and start playing with jetpacks and stuff. And so the North Wind, they end up tranquilizing them, and they plan to send them to Madagascar. So yeah, from there, the penguins end up waking up on a plane, and they end up basically, the Skipper's plan is to just like, he's like, I make my own option. Kowalski's like, we're 5 miles up in the air, it's like there's not much we can do, and then Skipper just basically says like, I make my own options, and then he presses a button to eject them all from the plane. So yeah, then there's this great like one-take sequence of all the 4 penguins like falling through the air and stuff, falling into like different planes that are flying by and stuff. It's a really good sequence. And then eventually they end up landing on the ground like with the help of a bouncy castle, and then I don't know how, I think they're like in the middle of the desert, but apparently they made it all the way to Shanghai. They think that they're in Ireland because Kowalski got the location wrong, so they think that they're in Ireland. So that was also a good bit where they think that they're in Ireland, and then they find out that Dave is probably going to attack Shanghai. They find out like he's basically going after all of the zoos and aquariums that he used to be at, that he was transferred to, and so he's like going to get revenge on the penguins from all those aquariums and zoos that he was at. So they're in Shanghai, but then they're like, okay, we have to get to Shanghai, so they mail themselves to the same place that they were at. And so, yeah, from there they go to the Shanghai Aquarium, where they have a plan to stop Dave, but the plan doesn't end up working out, and so Private ends up getting captured. And so you have Skipper, Kowalski, and Rico, they are teaming up they team up with the North Wind, basically, in order to, actually, they initially steal their plane in order to get to save Private, but then that doesn't end up working out, and they end up destroying the plane. And then from there, they're like drifting on sea with the North Wind, and then they end up finding the island that Dave is at. So then they have a plan off where they both compare plans of like which plan is better to save Private, and ultimately Skipper, for the sake of actually making sure that Private is safe, he decides to go along with the North Wind's plan because he thinks that it is better. Like, the whole thing with the Penguins is that, like, they're very good at, like, missions and stuff, but a lot of it is improvised and just, like, very, it's, like, very, like, kind of, I don't know how to describe it. It's, like, not well, it's, like, not the best thought out and relies a lot on, like, luck and of certain factors. So Skipper basically decides that he will just go along with it. He will go along with the North Wind's plan. So the Penguins, they end up acting as distractions while the Northwind try to go and they break in, try to capture Dave, but they fail to do so. They get captured. They were ambushed by some octopi, I think that's the plural, so they were ambushed by octopi, and so, yeah, at this point, I think, yeah, so the Penguins as well, Skipper, Kowalski, and Rico, they set off fireworks to celebrate what they think is Private's supposed to return at this point, but he doesn't, and then they gave away their location, so they also end up getting captured, and then from there, Dave demonstrates, he shows that he captured all of them, and so he is about to plan an actual, he used the Medusa serum earlier on, like, a cricket, and so now he's planning to use it on Private. He uses it, he, like, cranks it up to a higher level, but then Private manages to escape at the last second because earlier in the film, he swallowed a paperclip that Rico used, and so, very unsanitary, but anyway, so he manages to escape, but then Dave thinks that he disintegrated him, and everyone thinks that he's dead now, so but he does manage to escape. So he goes to rescue the Northwind from being killed, and so that happens. Then the Northwind is like, okay, we're going to go back to our base and we're going to come up with a new plan, but then Private says that, like, no, the Skipper would never leave a man behind, so Private goes to try to save the Penguins while the Northwind end up going to, like, tactically retreat, I guess, and so but Private, he is not able to save the Penguins, so they all turn into these monsters, and this leads into the final act of the film, where Dave releases all of the mutant penguins onto on this bay area of New York City, and so all the penguins are loose, and from there, yeah, Private, he ends up stealing Dave's ray, and he manages to snap Skipper, Kowalski, and Rico honestly doesn't really change, like, he's still kind of he acts the same whether he's mutant or not, so, but he snaps out Skipper and Kowalski, and so by reminding them, like, who they are and, like, that he's still alive and stuff, and so they come up with a plan in order to replace the Medusa serum with, like, an incredibly unmeasurable, cute substance, which they use Private for because he is apparently the cutest one, and so they end up doing that, and they put, like, early in the film, like, they also, like, they collected all of Dave's snow globes collection at some point early in the film, so they use it in order to strap all the snow globes onto the ray in order for, like, to split the beam so that all the penguins get affected, and so they're about to do it, but then the beam is out of battery, and so Rico has to go get some batteries while, like, Kowalski and Skipper, they're fighting off, like, some more octopi henchmen, and so then skip ahead, eventually Rico gets the batteries, and so he manages to get them to Skipper. Skipper ends up shooting he does this insane maneuver where it's like he uses a cheesy dipple bag, like, smashes it, shoots a single cheesy dipple that, like, flies through the air, and then manages to hit the button. So yeah, it's a cartoon, obviously, suspension of disbelief and all that, but yeah. So anyway, that ends up happening, and so yeah, the laser goes off at all the penguins. They go from mutants back to being cute again, and Dave is also, he turns into, like, a smaller version of himself that is cuter, I guess, and so, and he's in a snow globe now, in a snow globe now. By the way, I forgot to mention, but the exterminators were here throughout this entire, like, final sequence capturing penguins, and eventually they were the ones that captured, like, Kowalski and Rico and Skipper, which made, like, the final actual insane cheesy dipple shots so much more intense, I guess. So the Northwind, they showed up at some point they destroyed Dave's base, so I guess that was useful, but then they immediately got captured by animal control, I guess, or the exterminators, whatever they were. So yeah, and so everyone's, like, all the penguins are back to normal now, and Dave is captured, but Private, he ends up, like, because he was, like, they weren't sure of the effects of, like, actually using him as the power source, so he ends up, like, he turns kind of purple, and he ends up getting these antlers, but then Skipper basically says, oh, it's not about how you look, it's about, like, what you did and stuff, and so, yeah, that is pretty much where the film ends. That's not where the film ends exactly, like, you have Classified, who is, I forgot to mention, he's the leader of the Northwind. He says, like, he apologized to them, and he's like, if there's anything I can do to apologize for, like, doubting you guys, then, like, feel free to ask. And so they ask for jetpacks, and so that is how, yeah, so the film ends with them, like, basically flying in the distance with jetpacks, and then there's a post-credit scene where they do use Mort in order, for, like, Mort from the original trilogy, they use him in order to turn turned Private back to normal, and King Julian's also there, so that was cool, I guess. So yeah, that is the plot of the film. I'd give it a... The plot's like fine. I would say that I'll just give like a 3 out of 5. It's a fine plot, but I definitely think that like it works. I think that the comedy aspects of the film like definitely carry it a good amount. And yeah, we'll get into that. So the characters, I think that the 4 penguins are good. I think that they're like about as good, if not better. Like I think that they have good humor. I like their style of like humor and stuff, where it's like I don't even know how to describe it, but it's very much. Yeah, like very much improvised a lot of the stuff that they do, as well as like the jokes that they say. It's good stuff. So yeah, I think Skipper is good. Kowalski, Rico, honestly, none of them like really have arcs, to be honest, except for like maybe Skipper, I would say in Private, where Skipper just kind of learns that like he, like for the sake of helping out others, I guess specifically Private, like he has to be willing to sacrifice his like pride, I guess, or something in order to be able to save Private. Private himself goes through this, like he just wants to be appreciated by the team, and so throughout the, like he kind of has to prove himself of being like a valuable member by like defying Skipper's orders towards the end of the film, where Skipper says like, don't do this, it might, we don't know what it'll do to you. So yeah, I thought that the Penguin's good. I think that the North Wind characters, they're also good, I would say. I don't think any of the side characters are as good as like the third film, which they were much more interesting in the third film, I thought, but I think that this film, the North Wind, they're good, I would say. I think Dave is great. I think Dave is like probably the best villain in the Madagascar series. I'm trying to compare him to Dubois, because Dubois was also a really good villain. I think Dubois is like more menacing, I would say, definitely, where she has a lot better like moments, like the whole chase sequence in the third film, or just any time that she is pursuing Alex and the rest of the animals. I think that is great. But I do think that Dave has like a lot more personality to him, I guess, where it's like Dubois is kind of just a bit one note, where it's like her whole thing is just pursuing the animals and stuff, where Dave is like, he's a bit more eccentric, and he's got like he's got some good lines here and there. He's like a octopus. He's like kind of disguised himself as a human and stuff. So I think Dave is good. I'll get to the final character ranking, and I will decide which is the better villains there. So yeah, I would say that besides them, honestly, there's not really that many characters. There's basically like the 4 main penguins, the 4 North Wind agents, Dave, and I think that's it, honestly, if I'm not mistaken. There's like the other penguins and stuff, but at this point everyone else is just side characters. So yeah, overall the characters, I would give I'll go 6.5. I'll say good characters. I like them. And yeah, in terms of the settings, there is, let's see here, Fort Knox, I guess, at the start. That was cool. There was I'm trying to remember the name. I just said it before. Veneza. Let me check again. Right, it's Venezia. I have to remember that. So net, like in the internet. So yeah, so I think Venezia, that's a pretty cool location, I would say. Besides that, there is the North Wind layer. It's like fine, but we only see like one room of it, so it's not anything too memorable. There is Dave's lair, which is also like, you don't see much of it, and let's see what else is there. There is like the island area, which I didn't really care for too much, and there's the final area of like New York City. None of it's like great. There are like some good sequences of like, once again, the plane sequence, where I wouldn't really call that like a location, but I guess it did take place in like midair, where it's like the penguins are falling through the air and stuff. Shanghai was also fine, I would say. Yeah, to be honest, I don't really care for most of the settings. I would there's the Arctic as well at the beginning of the film. I would just say that the settings are, we'll go like a 5.5. We'll say decent. There's like some good areas, probably like Venezia, that's one of the better ones, and yeah, we're just gonna go 5.5 with the settings. Okay, so I did say in the last review that I do think I'm gonna start, probably instead of just saying art style, I'm just gonna say visuals as a category, which includes like art style, animation if I want to talk about it, or just anything else that may fit in that category, I guess. So in terms of the visuals, I think that the art style it's like, it came out in like 2014, so at this point it looks fine, I guess, but once again, just, I guess this isn't my favorite art style or anything. I think the visuals are alright, not as good as like the third film, I would say, definitely. I do like the animation still. It does look very, very cool, like the movement of the characters and stuff. So I think that that's something that probably is one of Madagascar's like strong suits. The Madagascar franchise, like the animation of the characters and stuff look good throughout most of the films. And I would say the visuals, probably I'll just go like we'll go like a 6 out of 10. We'll say it's above average, I would say. I like Dave's movements. I think Dave's movements, especially like when he is, I don't know, just like being flexible, I think that looks pretty cool, I would say. So in terms of the comedy, I think that this film had some good comedy. I would give it like a solid 7 out of 10. I would say there were definitely some good jokes by Skipper, especially. Like Skipper had a lot of good lines. I think that, yeah, just the penguins in general, like the penguins, they just have like a lot of good lines, a lot of funny funny bits here and there, and I would just say a solid 7 out of 10. So yeah. In terms of the worst thing, I think that the worst thing was probably just like when Private is actually like split up from the Penguins, and maybe the whole like playing off section where they're trying to actually save Private. I thought that stuff was, yeah, when it's just like Private on his own or the rest of the Penguins on their own, it feels better when they're all together. I felt like when like towards the start of the film and towards the end of the film when they get reunited, I would say. So when they're split up, I don't like it as much, but it doesn't ruin the film, so I'm just gonna give it like a 5 out of 10, I would say. So yeah. In terms of the best thing, I would say that the best thing was, I think I'll reuse the best score, which was the comedy, so I will give another 7 out of 10 for the comedy, because yeah, there were definitely some funny moments here and there and some good lines. So let's see your extra notes I wrote down. I wrote down, why did the Penguins want to go back to... Oh, yeah, so in the first Madagascar film, their whole goal is, like, to get back to Antarctica. But in this film, that kind of, like, contradicts the events of the first one, because they literally, at the start of the film, it's them complaining about how much they don't like Antarctica, because it's, like, just, there's nothing to do there and stuff. It's, like, a frozen tundra. So, and they're, like, tired of just, like, walking and stuff. So this kind of, like, contradicts the first film a bit, but whatever. I mentioned the chase sequence. Oh, okay, so I didn't mention this. The chase sequence of, like, when they're in Venezia. Yeah, here, got to write that time. So I think that the chase sequence is great, as well as the one-take plane sequence. So there are, like, I think Madagascar just does, like, these very good, like, chase, or these very long sequences of, like, characters, like, going from, like, just, I guess you could just say chase sequence, but the plane one is less of a chase sequence and more of just, like, a falling sequence. So Madagascar has good sequences, we'll say that. So yeah, let me see here. They have like this another, I guess this is like less of a funny joke and just more of like a that's kind of cool that they did. They gave the name of the, like, they would give the octopi henchman, Dave, he would like give the octopi henchman names, and he would kind of the sequence of like words he would say would be references to like celebrities and stuff. So he would say, like, he said like, Kevin, bake on, we're still gonna need that victory cake, and the joke is like Kevin Bacon. There's also Hugh Jackman, the battle station, so Hugh Jackman. So Elijah, would you do something like that? Elijah would. So yeah, I thought that was Halle Berry them. I thought yeah, so just clever, like not necessarily funny, but still just like I like that. So yeah, that is all the extra notes I have. So I'm going to do the calculations. So King. Alright, so it ends up coming out to about a 6 out of 10, which will be above average, but I think I would give it a bit higher than that. I think I'd probably go, I'd say like a 7 out of 10. I think that this was a pretty good film. We'll get the final like consensus on where the movies compare to each other when I do the ranking, but I think that for now I would just give this about a 7 out of 10. I thought it was a pretty good film, and yeah, that is pretty much all there is to it. So if you have any recommendations, any shows, movies, video game stores, anime, manga, web series, anything that you want me to review, once again, I am going to try to, hopefully in the coming days, I will try to get back to a bit more variety, because we have been doing a lot of movie reviews just because I am trying to catch up with all the viewer recommendations and stuff. But it is like, and I'm here on the weekends, and I prefer to watch movies while I'm in my house, because I actually can watch it on a TV rather than in my dorms, where if I watch movies, I have to watch it on a laptop, like a smaller screen and stuff. So I am going to hopefully try to get back to a bit more variety. We can get hopefully some show reviews and some anime reviews again, and not just and like also video game store reviews. I have to finish Yakuza 5. There's still another thing that I have to get done. So we're going to hopefully get back to a bit more variety and a bit less momentum, I guess you could say. Just, yeah. So yeah, that is pretty much all there is to it. So if you have any recommendations, any shows, movies, video game stores, shows, movies, video game stores, anime, manga, web series, anything that you want me to review, leave it in the comments and I'll maybe possibly check it out. With that said, that is pretty much all there is to it. So let's leave it at that.